Hey there, I'm trying something new today as I'm looking for what kind of more information I can give you both about the situation in Ukraine and also to kind of maybe make some videos in between the updates. As I explained many times, daily updates, I don't really find them that helpful. I find that having those updates maybe once or twice per week is more than enough to follow the situation because otherwise you get too much involved into day-to-day activities and then you notice one village taken and it becomes a really big problem, which it is not, because land can go both ways, and we already discussed many times why the map, the battle map of Ukraine does not matter. So I want to talk about something today, so don't expect a lot of structure. I just want to try and see how this goes. If you find any suggestions or any kind of comments about this kind of style, then please add some extra comments. I think I'm gonna maybe incorporate at some point later maybe overview of the web pages where I'm just gonna see the news, what is happening in Ukraine, and then basically go through what does it mean and how does it influence the current state of war, because very often there is some news that are significant for longer term rather than the shorter term, and also sharing some kind of preview would be really cool. So we know, like, the first thing I want to talk about is that there has been some news and discussions about the gas situation, right? The seventh sanctions package has been accepted, and while initially there was a big discussion about the fact that, hey, the like the sixth sanction package includes oil, which was very roughly, but at least it was agreed upon, whereas the seventh should have included the embargo on the gas. However, it did not happen. There was significant resistance, not only from the countries that we kind of get used to hearing about. Hey, there's Germany, France, Netherlands, Italy. That the countries that are kind of in this in between state. They don't have a lot of stake as they seem in this war in Ukraine, and they are rather leaning towards negotiating some kind of a shitty peace deal with the Putin. But it's also been a voice from some of the countries that are actually very much in support for Ukraine. So countries like Czechia, for example, it's a very good example. The argument that was made, from what I've understood, was that the dependence of the Europeans on the gas in Europe at this point is too big. So having a structured, essentially, outline on how to remove this gas is not yet feasible because there is not a proper plan on how to replace it. So it's a little bit of trading off on this blood of Ukrainians that we are doing as Europeans, but it is quite understandable because each country still kind of is very much worried about their own population, especially during winters. We know that Russia has been starving European Union with their gas supplies, supplying only the minimum required amounts, and it did create a lot of tension inside of the bloc. And right now, with the turbines now being installed back in the Nord Stream 1, the gas is being pumped in, and we're going to be expecting a winter where we're going to have some energy shortage. However, I don't expect us to be in any significant danger. I think the supplies are strong, and I think the deals that EU is doing is good enough. If we're going to have one winter when it's going to be just a little bit colder, or we're going to have a little bit of economic downslide, that is not the end of the world. We'll live through the crises before, even in my lifetime. It's been, 2000 wasn't really an economic crisis, but 2008 was a very shitty time. But I don't expect us even closely to come to the level of the crises of 2008. So Another topic that was interesting to talk about is that the business the business in Europe and euro in general is kind of getting a little bit hit, right? Because there is more raising uncertainty. There is, well, I don't expect there is a possibility of war, but we all know that the markets are kind of brutal and we're losing some of the standing compared to US, or maybe US is gaining if we compare it relative. Like as Einstein said, everything is relative. But I think I would assume that this is more of a short term situation, because it's just we need to adapt to a new level of what is happening. Obviously, the energy situation that I just spoke about influences that as well. But it's all a matter of time, and it's definitely going to get resolved. So I wouldn't worry about this. So in short term, we might see news maybe up until the end of the year, the news that, hey, this is a danger, like the euro has fallen and so on. But I haven't followed the actual trends, and I haven't been following up that closely to know exactly what motivated euro to fall in its relation to dollar. But all in all, I think this is fine. Also, we finally maybe start considering making some exporting potential for eurozone with the falling currency. That's not a bad idea. So another topic, obviously, that's on the plate right now to talk about is the grain. Ukraine and Russia allegedly are now in negotiations and supposed to sign the grain exports today. I think that is great. I think Turkey is continuing gain the political points. And to be clear, I don't really like Turkey. I don't like dictatorial regimes, period. That's why I feel that, for example, switching the dependency on the gas from Russia, one dictatorial power, to Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan, other two dictatorial powers, we're still, as Europeans, being completely dependent on the dictators in the world. But I think if at least, well, I'm hopeful that after this situation with Putin, we're going to be smart about it, and we're going to not go into the full-blown dependency where cutting off one supplier would be an absolute devastation to the level of fact that we will pretty much need to betray our own values because of, well, gas. It's a commodity, and I don't believe that we should be dependent on commodities in our values. I think, despite the whole idea of realpolitik that was very much prevalent in my growing up here in Europe. But with that said, I think that the grain export is a good thing. Obviously, Russia wants to get some benefits. I already found out that they are mostly going to be around trying to basically de-sanction some of the banks so they can receive the money for exports, and they're gonna try to leverage this into their own benefit to get basically some of the currency and so on, because right now they don't have the access to US dollar or euro, and that is a big problem for the Russian banks. The capitalization of Russian banks is suffering, and this is definitely a little bit of a saving grace for them. But all in all, and this brings us another very important point. We see that the Russian economy is definitely not suffering as much as we were expecting. Most of it is due to the paradox that I think a lot of people were not expecting at the beginning, which is that Russia's economy is very much export based, right? They're selling their natural resources, and they're very happy about it. So what happened is that while the ruble strengthened, and it's generally is not a very good idea because then you get less money inside of your own budget. with a strong currency when you're exporting. What happened is because the imports got closed off so extensively, almost by 2/3. Some people are reporting, and some analysts that actually follow this. So this created a paradox that while Russia was experiencing really hard economic pressure in the country, because a lot of this exports that are continuing ongoing, and because Europe decided that, hey, since the Russian gas pipe is closing down and we morally cannot do it, let's do one final round more. So, and we've seen this year, for example, Russian gas and oil before it started getting banned and so on. We saw a significant increase in purchases from the Russia. So they had the fall down of imports, so they didn't have to give out as much money, and then they saw basically quite significant raise in exports. And despite the falling currency, they still benefited quite a lot, and they were able to fulfill a lot of their budget obligations because of that. That doesn't mean that it's a situation that is good. It just means that we're extending the period when the sanctions are essentially going to hit Russia and when it's going to start to bite at all. Right now, if I believe, there is estimates of around 10% on the Russian GDP falling down this year, and maybe they are even less because I've seen some recalculations that it's going to be around 8, maybe 7, and 8 and 7% of GDP fall in 1 year obviously is not. I mean, it's in our democratic world that would be devastating because we're so dependent on some private entrepreneurship and small scale economies, whereas Russia is having these large suppliers of natural resources, and they don't really care about how bad the population of Russia is going to live. I think it was very interesting. Another topic that came out, and this is kind of outside my area because it's about psychology. It's about the idea that Putin is a psychopath, and he just and I mean psychopath not in the sense of derogatory statement, as a psychopath as a medical condition. That means he is incapable of experiencing human emotions, which is actually quite interesting thought to consider. I cannot say if it's true or not. I am not a specialist. I haven't seen the justification for it. I haven't seen who made it and basing on what. But it's an interesting idea to think about because it does explains a lot of the things that he's doing, right? If he was actually just mainly simulating human emotions, or maybe he was just encouraged to be a psychopath, that explains why he doesn't really care about killing so many people, killing so many Russians, or bombing the cities. But I think there is also empty voids in not empty voids, but the some unexplained parts of this proposition, because we see that it's Russian military commanders and soldiers that are also firing at the civilian population inside of Ukraine. Are they all psychopaths as well? So it's an interesting theory to consider, but I don't think that it's very. I think that there is counter arguments to be made, and again, it's not being made for any kind of Putin's personal doctor. So we should be very accurate, very precise when we're talking about someone else's medical condition. Also, that means as well as in a physical condition, there's been a lot of rumors about Putin and experiencing some kind of a threats to his health, and I don't really believe that it's real. Maybe he is sick or so on, but it's just silly to believe that something is going to happen to him. That's if it does, then it's really great. One less dictator in the world, but the rest. So yeah, I think this is a kind of interesting format. Let me know what you think. Maybe I should shorten down how much I talk. Maybe make more concise. Show something on the screen. It's just interesting. I was just considering that as an in-between video while we were waiting for actual situation update. This would be an interesting experiment, and also also a chance for me to talk a little bit on the camera, and maybe use this platform then to kind of follow up and maybe once a week answer the questions and talk about some of the smaller questions that would not require making a dedicated video for. Slava Ukraini!